The message came on a Tuesday. It arrived at the North American Space Center first, then spread to every major listening post on Earth within hours. No one knew what to make of it at first. A string of mathematical sequences followed by what seemed like desperate pleas in an unknown language. Dr. Samantha Wright stared at her computer screen, her coffee long forgotten. For 3 days straight, she had been trying to decode the alien transmission. As the lead linguist for the United Nations Space Command, she knew this was the real deal, actual first contact with an intelligent species. "I think I'm getting somewhere," she told Captain John Miller, who had been assigned to oversee the first contact protocol. John was a tall man with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much during the Mars colony wars. Now at 42, he found himself facing something far beyond what any human had encountered before. "What does it say?" John asked, looking over her shoulder at the strange symbols on the screen. Samantha pointed to the translation algorithm she had developed. "They call themselves the Arvani. Their star system is under attack by something called the Void Collective." She paused, scrolling through more text. "They're dying, John. Their civilization is being wiped out." John frowned. "How did they find us? We've barely sent probes beyond our solar system." "They've been listening to our radio signals for decades," Samantha said. "They discovered our military history, our strategies, our ways of fighting. They believe we can help them." General Peter Harris was less enthusiastic when John presented the findings at the Emergency Council meeting. The windowless room beneath the Pentagon was filled with military officials and scientists from around the world. "This could be a trap," the general said, his voice gruff from years of smoking. "We can't risk human lives based on an alien distress call." Across the table, Dr. Eric Scott from NASA disagreed. "The mathematical sequences they sent match exactly with universal constants. No deception there. They're reaching out in the only way they know how." John stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, if they wanted to harm us, why announce themselves? They know where we are. They've been listening to us." The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to ignore the message. Others wanted to send unmanned probes first. John listened to all sides, but in his gut, he knew what needed to be done. When it was his turn to speak again, he stood up. "The Arvani discovered us through our history books, our war stories, our military tactics. Think about that. A species advanced enough to travel between stars came to us for help against an enemy. Not for our technology, but for our strategic minds." The room fell silent. "If we turn our backs now," John continued, "we not only doom a civilization that reached out to us in their darkest hour, but we miss humanity's first chance to join a larger galactic community." 3 weeks later, John stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned starship Defiant Asterisk, Earth's first faster-than-light vessel built with theoretical designs that had been sitting in research labs for years. The emergency had accelerated what might have taken decades into a frantic construction period of less than a month. Lisa Carter, chief xenobiologist, joined him at the observation window. She was short with curly red hair and a brilliant mind that had earned her 3 PhDs before the age of 30. "Are we doing the right thing?" she asked. "Flying into an alien war?" John watched as Earth grew smaller in the distance. "I don't know. But I know we can't stand by while an intelligent species faces extinction. Not when they've asked for our help." Lisa nodded. "The transmission said the Void Collective has already taken 3 of their 7 worlds." "Then we better hope our reputation for warfare is deserved," John said quietly. "Because if the Arvani are right, humanity's fighting spirit might be the only thing standing between them and the end of their world." The Defiant Asterisk accelerated, and in a flash of blue light, disappeared into the unknown, carrying with it humanity's first ambassadors to the stars, and perhaps its first soldiers in an interstellar war. After 3 weeks of traveling through space using the experimental drive, the starship Defiant Asterisk finally arrived at Arvani Prime. The sight that greeted them was both beautiful and terrible. The planet glowed with blue-green oceans and purple continents, but orbital debris and damaged ships floated everywhere. Signs of recent battles scared the night side of the planet, where fires could be seen burning across entire cities. "My God," whispered Lisa Carter as she stood beside Captain John Miller on the bridge. They weren't exaggerating about being on the brink. John nodded grimly. "Open communications. Let's hope they remember inviting us." Communications Officer Olivia Green, a young woman with dark skin and steady hands, worked at her station. "Channel open, sir." Within moments, a face appeared on the main screen. The alien had pale blue skin with no hair, large eyes that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and a slender neck that supported an oval-shaped head. The alien spoke, and the ship's computer translated. "Humans, you have come. We had almost lost hope." John stepped forward. "I'm Captain John Miller of Earth. We received your message and came to help. I'm sorry it took us so long." The alien, who introduced himself as Elder Zalix, arranged for the human delegation to land at the capital city's spaceport. As their shuttle descended through the atmosphere, they saw the true extent of the damage. Entire sections of the once beautiful city lay in ruins. A small group of Arvani officials met them at the landing pad. The aliens were taller than humans, most standing over 7 feet, with graceful movements that seemed almost like dancing. Elder Zalix bowed deeply. "Thank you for coming. The Void Collective has already taken 3 of our 7 worlds. We fear Arvani Prime will be next." Frank Watson, the mission's chief engineer, couldn't hide his amazement as they were led through the Arvani city. Despite the destruction, the technology was clearly far beyond Earth's capabilities. Floating transport pods moved people effortlessly through crystal towers that reached into the clouds. Holographic displays showed real-time images from across their star system. "Their tech is at least a century ahead of ours," Frank whispered to John. "Maybe more in some areas." Lisa Carter was equally impressed, but noticed something else. "Have you seen any weapons? Any defense systems?" John realized she was right. Despite being under attack, there were no visible defenses, no military checkpoints, no armed guards. The Arvani moved with purpose but showed no signs of preparing for war. They arrived at a massive domed structure where Arvani leaders had gathered. The chamber hushed as the humans entered. Elder Zalix introduced John and his team to the Council of Elders, 12 Arvani who govern their civilization. "Show them," said one of the elders. A 3-dimensional display appeared in the center of the room, showing the Arvani star system. 4 planets glowed blue, while 3 others pulsed an angry red. "The red ones have fallen to the Void Collective," Elder Zalix explained. "They consume everything: resources, technology, life itself. They leave nothing behind." "Where are your warships? Your defense systems?" John asked. The elders looked at each other with confusion. "We have none," Elder Zalix said finally. "Our species evolved without the concept of warfare. We have disagreements, yes, but violence as a means to resolve them disappeared from our culture thousands of years ago." Lisa leaned toward John. "They're telling the truth. I've been scanning their biological responses. They genuinely don't understand fighting." John felt a chill run down his spine. "If you don't fight, how have you survived this long against the Void Collective?" "We run," another elder answered simply. "We evacuate our people when we can, but now we have nowhere left to go. That is why we reached out to humans." "What made you think we could help?" John asked. Elder Zalix touched a control, and suddenly the room was filled with human voices, radio broadcasts, television shows, and military communications that had been traveling through space for decades. "Your history is filled with warfare," Elder Zalix said. "You understand something we do not: how to fight, how to defend, how to survive against those who wish to destroy you." John looked at his team, then back at the desperate faces of the Arvani. "Show us everything you know about the enemy. If humans are going to help you fight, We need to understand what we're up against. The Arvani control room was dark except for the glow of screens showing recordings of Void Collective attacks. Captain John Miller and his team had been studying these videos for hours. The room was silent as they watched another Arvani city fall to the strange, insect-like ships that moved in perfect unison. "Play it again," said Science Officer Diane Powell. She was the newest member of the team, a brilliant physicist with short blonde hair and intense focus. "Slow it down to quarter speed." The footage played again. This time, Diane pointed at the screen. "Look at the pattern. When the first ship changes direction, the others follow exactly 0.27 seconds later, every time." Military strategist Alan Morris nodded. He was a stocky man with a shaved head who had fought in 3 Earth conflicts before joining the space program. "It's like watching a school of fish or a flock of birds, but with perfect precision." "Or an ant colony," John said quietly. "They're not thinking individually. They're connected somehow." Lisa Carter looked up from her datapad. The Arvani said they tried jamming communications between the ships, but it had no effect. "Because they're not using standard communications," Diane said suddenly. "Look at this energy reading." She pointed to a graph. "These spikes in quantum activity happen exactly when the ships change formation. They're using quantum entanglement." Frank Watson whistled. "No wonder the Arvani couldn't block it. You can't jam quantum entanglement. It's instantaneous communication across any distance. So they're all controlled by one mind," John said. "Like a queen bee controlling a hive." Alan snapped his fingers. "That's it. Earth insects, ants, bees, termites, they all have a central intelligence, a queen. Without the queen, the colony falls apart." Lieutenant Kelly Rogers, a young communications specialist with red hair and freckles, had been quiet until now. "If they use quantum entanglement, maybe we can trace it back to the source. Find their queen." The door slid open, and Elder Zelix entered with several other Arvani. "Have you found anything helpful in our records?" John stood up straight. "We think we understand how the Void Collective operates. They're a hive mind, many bodies but one controlling intelligence. If we can find and neutralize that central intelligence, the rest might fall apart, or at least become disorganized." The Arvani looked confused. "Hive mind? We have no such concept." Lisa tried to explain. "On Earth, we have insects that operate as collectives, many bodies sharing one purpose, directed by a central leader." One of the younger Arvani stepped forward. His name was Nelox, and he had been assigned as their guide. "Like our shared dreams, when all Arvani connect during the Great Sleep." "Similar, maybe," John said. "But this connection is constant and controlled by one entity that makes all the decisions." Before they could discuss further, alarms began to sound throughout the complex. Elder Zelix's skin paled to an almost white shade. "They're attacking the moon base," he said. "Our last major evacuation center." John looked at his team. "How many people on that base?" "Over 50,000, Nelox answered. "Mostly children and elders." John made a quick decision. "We need to get up there. Now." Elder Zelix shook his head. "There is no time. The base will fall before any ships could reach it." "What about those?" Alen pointed out the window to a row of small, sleek vessels. "Atmospheric shuttles," Nelox explained. "They can reach the moon, but they have no weapons, no defenses." "We don't need weapons yet," John said. "We need to see the enemy up close. And we need to show the Arvani that fighting back is possible." Against all protocols and direct orders from Earth, John selected a small team. Himself, Alan, Kelly, and 2 volunteers from the crew. The Arvani watched in confusion as the humans prepared for battle without any weapons. "What will you do against such a force?" Elder Zelix asked. John smiled grimly. "What humans have always done when facing impossible odds. We'll improvise." As the shuttle lifted off toward the moon, Lisa caught John's arm. "This is crazy, you know that, right?" Probably, he admitted. But if we're going to help these people, they need to see that the Void Collective can be fought. Fear is the enemy's greatest weapon right now. The shuttle doors close, and the small craft shot upward. 5 humans heading toward humanity's first interstellar battle against an enemy that had never known defeat. The shuttle shook violently as it approached the Arvani moonbase. Through the viewport, they could see at least 30 Void Collective ships surrounding the dome structures. The alien vessels looked like giant metal insects, with long, segmented bodies and multiple appendages that glowed with strange energy. "This is worse than I thought," Alan said as he studied the enemy formation. "They're setting up for a final strike." John turned to Kelly. "Any response to our hails from the moonbase?" She adjusted her headset. "Yes, but they're confused. They don't understand why we're here or what we plan to do." John took the communication device. "This is Captain John Miller from Earth. We're here to help with evacuation and defense. We need to know the layout of your base and where your people are gathered." The Arvani on the other end sounded terrified. "Defense? We have no defenses. The shields are failing. We are gathered in the central chambers, but there is nowhere to go." "There's always somewhere to go," John replied firmly. "We're coming in fast. Be ready to follow our instructions." John turned to Security Chief Paul Bennett, a tall, muscular man with dark skin who had been quiet during the journey. "Any ideas on how to approach without getting blown apart?" Paul studied the collective ships. "They're organized in attack formations, but they're not watching their flanks. If we come in from below the horizon, we might slip past them." "Do it," John ordered the pilot. The shuttle dropped to just above the lunar surface, kicking up dust as they sped toward the base from an unexpected angle. The Void Collective ships didn't seem to notice them, focused entirely on their coordinated assault on the main dome. They landed at a small maintenance airlock and rushed inside. The Arvani inside looked at the humans with wide, frightened eyes. Their blue skin had turned almost white with fear. "Where are your people?" John asked the nearest Arvani. "Central Dome," the alien replied, pointing down a corridor. "All 50,000. Paul looked at John. 50,000 people in one place. That's not evacuation. That's a slaughter waiting to happen. "Then we changed the plan," John said. He turned to the Arvani. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge." They rushed through the corridors until they reached the central dome. The sight was heartbreaking. Thousands of Arvani huddled together, many of them children, all waiting quietly for the end. The dome above showed the Void Collective ships positioning for the final strike. An elder Arvani approached them. "You are the humans. You cannot save us. The shields will fail in minutes." "We're not here to save you," John said. "We're here to help you save yourselves. Are there other exits from this chamber?" The elder nodded. "Service tunnels, maintenance shafts, emergency routes, but they all lead to the surface, and the enemy is everywhere." John smiled. "Perfect." Alan, Paul set up defensive positions at all main entrances. "Kelly, I need you to keep monitoring their communications. Any pattern changes, I want to know immediately." The Arvani watched in confusion as the humans began organizing them into groups. John pointed to the tunnels. "We're going to split your people into smaller groups and move through different routes. The Void Collective expects you all to be here. They don't know about these other paths." "But once we reach the surface?" the elder asked. "Your shuttles," Alan said. "You have hundreds of small vessels in the hangars. If we launch them all at once, in different directions." Understanding dawned on the elder's face. They cannot chase all of them. Paul was already organizing the first groups. "Exactly. And while they're confused, we hit them where it hurts." The Arvani looked lost. "Hit them? With what weapons?" John pointed to the ceiling. "The base has maintenance robots for repairs, right? And mining equipment." The elder nodded slowly. "Then we have weapons," John said with determination. "We just need to use them in ways you never considered." As the dome above them cracked under the collective's assault, the humans put their plan into action. For the first time since the war began, the Arvani weren't running in panic. They were moving with purpose, following human instructions that went against everything they knew. As John helped organize the counterattack, he heard Kelly call out to him excitedly, "Captain, their formation is changing. They're confused. The attack pattern is breaking down." John smiled grimly. They expected surrender, not resistance. Let's show them what happens when you corner humans. News of the successful defense of the moon base spread quickly across the Arvani system. The humans had done the impossible. They had faced the Void Collective and survived. More importantly, they had saved over 45,000 Arvani lives. Back on Arvani Prime, Lisa Carter and her team worked tirelessly with Arvani scientists to understand the enemy better. In a large laboratory filled with strange equipment, Lisa examined tissue samples taken from a damaged Void Collective ship. "These cells are unlike anything I've seen," she told Elder Zalix. "They're biological, but integrated with technology in ways we can't yet achieve on Earth." Neelox, the young Arvani who had become their guide, leaned closer. "We have observed that the ships heal themselves if given time. Like a living organism," Lisa nodded, "but they must have a weakness." As they worked, the door to the lab slid open. John Miller entered, looking tired but pleased. Behind him came several aliens that were not Arvani. They had gray skin, 4 arms, and large, compound eyes. "Lisa, meet the Taraxians," John said. They'd been hiding in the outer system, watching the conflict. After hearing about what happened at the moon base, they'd decided to join us. Elder Zalix bowed to the newcomers. "We welcome your support, though we did not know your kind still existed in our system." The lead Taraxian spoke in a clicking voice that the translators converted to English. "We have hidden since the collective arrived, but the humans have shown that resistance is possible." More alien representatives arrived over the next few days. The Vonari, a species of floating gas-filled beings. The Krill, small but technically advanced creatures with exoskeletons. And the Morvans, tall, silent aliens who communicated through color changes in their skin. A true coalition was forming under human leadership. John Miller found himself in the strange position of coordinating military strategy for 5 different alien species, none of which had ever fought a war before. "The tide is turning," Alan told John as they stood in the command center, now bustling with activity from multiple species. "The Void Collective has slowed its advance. I think we got them confused." Before John could respond, a communication came through. Admiral Susan Baker's face appeared on the main screen. She was an older woman with steel gray hair and the no-nonsense attitude that had earned her command of Earth's first battle fleet. "Captain Miller, we're approaching the Arvani system with 3 warships and support vessels. Earth has voted unanimously to commit to this fight." John couldn't hide his surprise. "Admiral, I didn't think the United Nations would agree to full involvement." Admiral Baker actually smiled. "Let's just say your reports about advanced Arvani technology were very convincing to the Council. Plus, the idea of humans being the military saviors of more advanced alien species appeals to a lot of people back home." With Earth reinforcements on the way, the coalition began implementing the unified defense strategy. Hall Bennett started training Arvani volunteers in basic combat techniques. The peaceful aliens were hesitant at first, but after seeing their homes destroyed, many were willing to learn. "Keep your movements small and efficient," Paul instructed a group of Arvani. "You don't have instincts for fighting, so you need to rely on training and discipline." Meanwhile, Lisa made a breakthrough with the Arvani scientists. She burst into the command center, her eyes bright with excitement. "We've developed a biotechnology that might disrupt the collective's quantum communication." She placed a small device on the table. It pulsed with a soft blue light. It generates a quantum field that mimics their patterns but introduces random noise. In theory, it should confuse their coordination. John picked up the device carefully. "In theory." Lisa shrugged. We can't test it without getting close to them. Then we'll get close, John said. He turned to the coalition representatives gathered around the table. It's time we stop playing defense. We need to take the fight to them. The aliens looked at each other nervously, but none objected. In just weeks, the humans had transformed a desperate last stand into the beginning of a counteroffensive. For the first time since the Void Collective appeared, hope was spreading through the Arveni system. As Admiral Baker's fleet approached, John knew the real test was still to come. They had surprised the enemy once. The next time would be much harder. The command room fell silent as the holographic display showed their target. A massive Void Collective hive ship that controlled smaller attack vessels. It resembled a giant spider with dozens of legs, each ending in what looked like a ship dock. This is our primary target, John said to the gathered coalition leaders. Intelligence suggests this hive ship coordinates attacks on the fourth Arveni world. If we can disable or destroy it, we might buy enough time to evacuate more civilians. Admiral Baker studied the display. Our Earth vessels are armed, but we don't know if our weapons will be effective against their hulls. Frank Watson stepped forward. I think I can help with that. The engineer had been working day and night with Arvani scientists. We've adapted some of the Arvani energy technology to our weapon systems. In theory, it should penetrate their organic hulls. In theory, John repeated with a small smile. It seemed everything they were doing was theoretical. The plan was set. 3 Earth warships would lead the attack, supported by hundreds of smaller Arvani vessels. The Taraxians provided stealth technology that might hide their approach, while the Krill contributed advanced scanning equipment to track collective movements. As they prepared to leave, Lisa handed John several of the quantum disruptors she had developed. Remember, these need to be placed as close to their command centers as possible. I'll keep that in mind if I happen to find myself having tea in their bridge, John joked, but he carefully packed the devices. The fleet departed at dawn. From the bridge of the lead Earth vessel, renamed Unity for the mission, John watched as the combined alien armada moved through space. It was a sight no human had ever witnessed before. 5 different species flying together, united against a common enemy. Their approach went smoothly, the Taraxian stealth technology working better than expected. They were within striking distance of the hive ship when Kelly Rogers noticed something. Captain, the smaller ships are moving. They're forming a defensive pattern we haven't seen before. Alan studied the movement. They've adapted. They know we're here. Before anyone could respond, the Void Collective attacked. Dozens of smaller ships swarmed toward them, moving in perfect coordination. The battle had begun. All vessels, engage according to plan. Admiral Baker ordered calmly, remember your training. The Earth warships opened fire, their modified weapons cutting through several collective vessels. The Arvani ships, piloted by newly trained crews, moved in the defensive patterns humans had taught them. The Krill vessels darted between larger ships, their scanning beams identifying weak points in the enemy hulls. For several minutes, it seemed they might succeed. The coalition forces pushed closer to the hive ship, and Frank's modified weapons were working. But then, something changed. They're adapting, Kelly shouted. Their formation is shifting to counter our strategy. John watched as the collective ships changed tactics mid-battle, moving in ways they hadn't seen before. Several Arvani vessels were hit, their pilots unused to combat situations. They're learning from us, John realized. Pull back. All ships pull back to secondary positions. As they retreated, a massive energy beam shot from the hive ship, striking one of the Earth vessels. The ship didn't explode. Instead, it seemed to freeze in space, all systems failing at once. What just happened? Admiral Baker demanded. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but more advanced, Frank said, checking the readings. They just disabled every system on that ship. The coalition forces retreated, taking heavy losses. What had started as a promising offensive had turned into a near disaster. Back at Arvani Prime, the mood was grim as they assessed the damage. We lost 28 ships and the Valiant is completely disabled, Admiral Baker reported. But we did gather valuable data. Diane Powell had been analyzing that data. I can confirm my theory now. The high ship contains the Central Intelligence, a queen that controls the smaller vessels. And I think I've located their home system. John looked up. How? The quantum signals. They all trace back to one location, far from here. She pointed to a star map. I believe that's where the Void Collective originated and where their main intelligence remains. John stared at the distant star system. Then that's where we need to go. Not to fight a battle, but to end the war. The plan was dangerous, perhaps suicidal, but John Miller saw no other option. The Coalition had won small victories, but the Void Collective was learning, adapting to their tactics faster than expected. They needed to strike at the source. Operation Lighthouse, John called it, as he stood before Admiral Baker and the Coalition leaders. A small team infiltrates the Collective's home system while the main fleet creates a diversion elsewhere. Infiltrates how? Asked Elder Zalix. Their system will be heavily defended. Frank Watson stepped forward. I've modified an Arvani scout ship with Taraxian stealth technology. It's small, fast, and nearly invisible to sensors. And once we're there, Lisa asked. She knew she would be part of this mission. John activated a hologram showing several devices. We plant these quantum disruptors at key locations around their core world. Once activated, they'll create a feedback loop in their communication network. If Diane's theory is correct, it could sever the connection between the Central Intelligence and its drone ships. Admiral Baker looked skeptical. This is based on a lot of assumptions. It is, John agreed. But every day we delay, another world falls. We're running out of time and options. After much debate, the plan was approved. John would lead the mission with a small team. Lisa Carter, Paul Bennett, and Frank Watson. The scout ship, renamed Shadow was prepared for the dangerous journey. The night before departure, John found Nilox in the observation dome, looking at the stars. Your people have changed us, the young Arvani said without turning. For thousands of years, we believed violence was behind us. Now we learn to fight again. I'm sorry for that, John said honestly. Nilox turned to face him. Do not be. Without you, we would not exist at all. Sometimes survival requires difficult choices. The next morning, as the Shadow prepared to depart, Admiral Baker gave final instructions to the fleet. Once the diversion begins, you have 48 hours to complete your mission. After that, we'll have to retreat or risk losing everything. The journey took 5 days, traveling through rarely used jump points to avoid detection. When they finally arrived at the edge of the Void Collective's home system, they were shocked by what they saw. The entire system was encased in what looked like a web of biomechanical structures. Planets had been hollowed out, their materials used to build massive hive structures. At the center was a sun surrounded by a partial Dyson sphere that harvested its energy. My God, whispered Lisa, this isn't just a species. It's a civilization that's consumed itself. Frank checked their stealth systems. We're still hidden, but for how long I can't say. Their technology here is far more advanced than what we've encountered. The team navigated carefully through the web-like structures, approaching what Diane had identified as the core world, a planet completely covered in structures that resembled a massive brain, with electric pulses visibly flowing across its surface. That's our target, John said. We need to place disruptors at these 4 locations for maximum effect. They landed the Shadow in what appeared to be a maintenance channel, a rare spot not swarming with drone workers. Suited up in protective gear, the team split into pairs to place the disruptors faster. John and Lisa headed toward the northern hemisphere, while Paul and Frank took the southern. As they moved through the strange, pulsing corridors of the living structure, Lisa collected tissue samples. This is incredible, she whispered. The entire planet is one organism, with technology fused to biology at a cellular level. They placed their first disruptor and moved toward the second location. But as they approached, Lisa stopped suddenly, staring at her scanner. "John, I'm detecting brain patterns, human-like brain patterns. Millions of them." "What are you saying?" John asked, though he feared he already knew. "This isn't just a hive mind," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "It's a collective of absorbed consciousnesses. The Void Collective doesn't just consume resources and technology. It absorbs the minds of the species it conquers." Before they could process this horror, alarms began to sound. Their presence had been detected. From every direction, drone ships and workers began to converge on their positions. "We've been discovered," Paul's voice came over the comm. "We've placed our disruptor, but we're cut off from the ship." "Head to the rendezvous point," John ordered. "We have to place the final disruptor at all costs." As they ran through the living corridors, pursued by swarms of drones, John knew that not all of them would make it back to the Shadow Asterisk. The fate of 5 species now depended on whether they could complete their mission. Alarms blared as John and Lisa ran through the living corridors of the Void Collective's core world. They had 1 disruptor left to place, but drones were closing in from all directions. "We'll never make it to the final location," Lisa said, breathing hard as they ducked into a small chamber to hide. John checked his map. "We don't need to. If we can reach that control node 50 meters ahead, the disruptor should affect enough of the network." Their comms crackled. "Captain, it's Bennett. Watson is injured. We're surrounded." John's heart sank. "Hold position. We're placing the final disruptor now." "Negative, sir." Paul's voice was calm despite the situation. "There are too many, but I have an idea." Before John could respond, they heard explosions through the comm. Paul had detonated his backup power cells, creating a massive distraction. "Go now," Paul shouted over the noise. "We'll make it back to the ship somehow." John and Lisa used the distraction to move toward the control node. They'd reached it just as the first wave of drones rounded the corner behind them. "Cover me," John said as he began attaching the final disruptor. Lisa fired their improvised weapon, a modified Arvani energy tool. It wasn't designed for combat, but it kept the drones back long enough for John to finish. "Done," he shouted, activating in 30 seconds. "Run." They sprinted through the corridors, following their path back to the maintenance channel, where they had left the Shadow Asterisk. Behind them, the first quantum disruptor activated, sending pulses through the network. When they reached the ship, Frank was there, bleeding from a wound in his leg. But Paul was nowhere to be seen. "He didn't make it," Frank said grimly. "He held them off so I could escape." There was no time to mourn. The second and third disruptors activated, and the entire structure around them began to shudder. The quantum feedback was spreading through the network. "Get us out of here," John ordered as they lifted off. As the Shadow Asterisk raced away from the core world, they watched in awe as the final disruptor activated. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Pulses of energy spread across the surface of the planet like lightning. The web-like structures connecting the system began to go dark. "It's working," Lisa whispered. "The connection is being severed." Throughout the galaxy, reports came in of Void Collective forces suddenly stopping, their ships drifting powerless in space. The hive mind had been disconnected. The journey back to Arvani Prime was solemn. They had succeeded, but at a high cost. Paul Bennett had sacrificed himself to ensure the mission's success. When they arrived, they were greeted as heroes, but John felt little joy in their victory. "We need to go back," he told Admiral Baker the next day. "To the core world." "Go back? Why?" the Admiral asked. Lisa discovered something. The collective isn't just a hive mind. It's made up of the absorbed consciousnesses of conquered species. With the central control gone, those minds might be freed. 1 month later, a coalition fleet returned to the Void Collective's home system. What they found was beyond their expectations. Thousands of former drone ships now drifted aimlessly. When they boarded, They discovered confused beings of various species, freed from the control that had bound them for generations. They don't remember much, Lisa reported after examining several former drones. But they're individuals again, not parts of the collective. A year later, representatives from 12 species gathered on Earth for a historic occasion. The Galactic Cooperative was being formed, with humanity recognized as its founding architects. Former enemies now worked together to rebuild what had been lost. During the ceremony, John stood with Lisa, Frank, and a hologram of Paul Bennett, honored posthumously. Who would have thought, Lisa said quietly, that what would save advanced civilizations was humanity's primitive knowledge of warfare? John smiled. Not warfare. Determination. The willingness to fight for others, not just ourselves. As the ceremony concluded, a young aide rushed up to John with an urgent message. A transmission had been received from a distant galaxy. Another plea for help from a civilization facing extinction. John and Lisa exchanged glances. The cycle was beginning again. But this time, humanity wouldn't be going alone. They had friends among the stars now, and together, they would face whatever came next. Tell them, John said simply, that help is on the way.